Welcome to Drawbridge, Sam. And to the GHV Magellan, our mobile base of operations. Come on.
Sam, would you mind if I joined you?
Humor him. His knowledge and experience will probably come in handy down the road.
Death Stranding 2 is an action-adventure game that continues the story of Sam Porter Bridges, taking players on a new journey across harsh environments like Mexico and Australia, where survival and building connections remain central themes. The game's graphics are incredibly realistic, making every desert and mountain feel alive. And the gameplay now includes new ways to travel like monorails and the challenge of changing weather that can affect how you move. Combat has gotten deeper with more enemy types and new tools that let you choose between stealth, fighting, or avoiding conflict altogether, while the story introduces new characters and political tensions that add layers of mystery to the experience.
Please understand, Sam.
You're still with me?
Ghost of Yotei is an upcoming open-world action-adventure game from Sucker Punch that takes us to the snowy mountains of Ezo in 1603, which is now called Hokkaido, and it's set about 300 years after the story of Jin from Ghost of Tsushima. You play as a wandering warrior named Atsu, and she's probably not just a regular Ronin, because everything from her wolf-themed armor to her repaired ghost mask hints at some deeper past and maybe even some spiritual connection to the indigenous Ainu culture who believed animals were gods. The world looks colder and rougher than Tsushima, and Atsu's fighting style feels sharper with 2 swords in her hands and a matchlock rifle slung on her back, which tells me the combat might be faster and more brutal. The trailer shows a wanted poster, a list of animal names crossed out in blood, and a golden ghost mask. And all of that makes me think we're in for a more personal and mysterious story. If you liked Ghost of Tsushima but want something darker with deeper history and new weapons to master, then Ghost of Yotei might be exactly what you're waiting for.
Who are you? I thought we killed your whole family.
The snake. The Oni. Kitsune. The spider. The dragon. Lord Saito.
What are we going to do with this one?
The Witcher 4 looks amazing, running on Unreal Engine 5 with beautiful graphics and smooth performance on PlayStation 5 at 60 frames per second. You play as Ciri, a skilled monster hunter, exploring a huge world called Kovir, filled with dense forests and lively towns. The game features very realistic horse riding with Ciri's loyal companion Kelpie, who moves and reacts naturally. The world feels alive with detailed foliage, dynamic lighting, and characters that respond to what you do. This next Witcher game promises to be the most immersive open-world RPG yet, combining art and technology in a stunning way.
Salt.
Almost had me fooled, Fruin.
Avowed is a first-person RPG where you explore a mysterious land, fight deadly enemies, and use magic or swords to shape your own journey. And honestly, It's got a lot going for it. The combat is fun because you can mix different weapons and spells, but sometimes it feels a little rough around the edges. The world is rich with lore and cool places to discover, but there are moments where it feels a little too empty. The story has some strong moments and lets you make meaningful choices, but it doesn't always feel as exciting as it could be. It's a solid RPG with great potential, and while it's not perfect, it's still worth checking out if you enjoy deep fantasy worlds.
What do you know of the living lands?
Every man has an animal within. If you push too much, you might unleash the beast.
Dying Light: The Beast is a first-person open-world action horror game, and it's actually a standalone spin-off that started out as DLC for Dying Light 2, but evolved into something much bigger.
Hey, Olivia, the gas worked. That freak came here.
Did you manage to kill it?
Yeah.
Well, thank God.
You still play as Kyle Crane, but this time the world feels darker and more brutal, and honestly, the whole setting just hits different. Instead of tall city skylines, you're moving through dense forests, crumbling towns, and underground tunnels, and the tone feels way more personal. The grappling hook is back, but parkour seems toned down, which might disappoint some fans, but the new enemy types like invisible volatiles and electric mutants look terrifying in a good way. And with fully cinematic cutscenes and destructible environments, it already feels like a major step up from Dying Light 2. Banishers: Ghosts of New Eden is an action RPG that puts you in the shoes of two ghost hunters, Red and Antea, as they explore a cursed town filled with spirits and tough choices. The combat is a fun mix of swordplay and supernatural powers, where you switch between Red's physical attacks and Antea's ghostly abilities, making every fight feel different. But what really stands out is the story. It's emotional, full of difficult decisions, and actually changes depending on what you do. The world is dark and atmospheric, with creepy locations and a haunting soundtrack that pulls you in. Some parts of the game can feel a bit slow, and the combat takes time to get used to, but the way it blends action with storytelling makes it a really unique experience. If you love RPGs that actually make you think, this one is worth playing. Okay, so Baldur's Gate 3? This is probably my most played game on this list, and I think it's actually one of the best games of the last 5 years. The story just pulls you in and doesn't let go with these amazing characters you meet along the way, and the world is massive and so much fun to explore. You can wander around for hours and hours and still find something new, and the open world is packed with secrets and surprises. It's got that classic Dungeons & Dragons feel, but with really cool modern graphics. And the combat is turn-based, which I know can be a turn-off for some people, but honestly, it just works perfectly and gives you time to really think about your moves. I just love how much freedom you have in this game to create your own character and story. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is seriously intense. I mean, seriously, this game is not for the faint of heart. The story is gripping, and the way it tackles mental health is really something else.
What have you done? Stop. Please help!
You're right there with Senua, battling her inner demons, and the voices in her head are so realistic, it's actually kind of unsettling. The combat is brutal too, and you really have to be strategic to survive. I found myself holding my breath during some of the bigger fights, but what really blew me away were the visuals. The environments are stunning, and the way they blend reality with Senua's perceptions is just incredible. I found myself stopping to admire the scenery all the time, which I don't usually do in games. Honestly, Hellblade 2 is more than just a game, it's an experience. It's definitely challenging and emotionally draining, but it's also incredibly rewarding. If you're looking for something different and thought-provoking, then this is the game for you.
The place is coming down!
Okay, so I finally got my hands on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and wow, this game is a wild ride from start to finish. You get to explore all these amazing locations like ancient temples and hidden cities, and the puzzles are really clever. I spent hours trying to figure some of them out. The story is super exciting too, with plenty of twists and turns that kept me guessing the whole time, plus the graphics are incredible. It actually feels like you're in a classic Indiana Jones movie. The combat can be a little clunky at times though, and I wish there were more enemy variety because after a while it starts to feel a bit repetitive.
Should have left this alone.
Yeah? Well, should have done a lot of things.
But honestly, those are just minor nitpicks in an otherwise awesome game. If you're a fan of Indiana Jones or just love a good action adventure, then you definitely need to check this one out. Okay, so I finally got around to playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And let me tell you, it was like stepping back into a world I knew and loved, but with a whole new perspective. Remember all those awesome moments from the original? Well, they're back, but with even more depth and detail. And the story goes in some crazy directions that I totally didn't see coming. I got so attached to the characters this time around, like they felt like old friends. And the combat kept me on my toes with all the different strategies and abilities you can use. Honestly, I did get a little lost in those massive dungeons sometimes, and the story kind of dragged in a few places, but overall it was an amazing experience that brought back so many memories and made me fall in love with Final Fantasy VII all over again. If you're a fan of the original, you owe it to yourself to check out Rebirth.
Bring it!
Okay, so I jumped into Dragon's Dogma 2, and at first I was like, whoa, this is a little rough around the edges, because some things were glitchy and it felt kind of clunky. But you know what? They've been putting out a bunch of patches, and the more I played, the more I got hooked. Seriously, the combat is just so satisfying, especially when you're like climbing up a giant cyclops and stabbing it right in the eye. Plus, the world is huge, and there's always something cool to discover around every corner. And can we talk about the pawns? I love those little guys. They're always there to back you up in a fight, and they actually learn and get stronger as you play, which is really awesome. I will say that some of the quests can get a little repetitive, and the menus are kind of confusing, but honestly, that didn't bother me too much. If you're into action RPGs with a huge world and tons of freedom, you should definitely check out Dragon's Dogma 2. Okay, so I jumped into Death Stranding, and honestly, at first I was like, what am I even doing? You're basically this delivery guy just walking around this crazy landscape carrying tons of stuff and trying not to fall over, which is way harder than it sounds. There are these weird invisible monsters that try to grab you, and you have to hold your breath to avoid them, which is kind of creepy. I will say the story is pretty wild and the world is really interesting to explore, but it definitely gets a bit repetitive. I mean, some might call this game a walking simulator, which it probably is, and it might not be for everyone, as a lot of people might find it boring. But there's something about it that just kept me going, like I had to see what was next and where this crazy story was going. Plus, the graphics are insane and the soundtrack is amazing, so that definitely helped keep me hooked.
Opa, bora lá.
Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl is finally here, and it was definitely worth the wait. This game is a hardcore survival experience that throws you into a bleak and unforgiving world where danger lurks around every corner. The atmosphere is incredible with stunning graphics and sound design that really immerse you in the zone. I loved exploring the eerie abandoned buildings and scavenging for supplies while trying to avoid deadly anomalies and mutated creatures. The gunplay is intense, and the survival mechanics are challenging, but rewarding. It's not a game for everyone, though, as it can be pretty unforgiving and you'll need to be patient and strategic to survive. But if you're looking for a truly immersive and unforgettable survival experience, then Stalker 2 is definitely worth checking out. Black Myth Wukong is a visual masterpiece with next-level graphics and environments so detailed and atmospheric that I felt like I was exploring a living painting. And the combat is just as impressive because it's fast-paced and challenging, with a deep moveset that lets you unleash some seriously cool combos and transformations to outsmart your enemies. I especially loved experimenting with all the different ways to fight and figuring out which abilities worked best against different enemies. While the story could have been a bit more engaging and some of the boss fights were definitely tough as nails, those are honestly minor complaints in an otherwise incredible game that any fan of action RPGs or anyone who appreciates stunning visuals and challenging gameplay should definitely check out.